This is really serious. It's moving fast. The heat, the lack of humidity, and the winds are all driving a very dangerous situation and making it worse.
A state of emergency tonight. California's fire season kicks into high gear in Northern California's wine country.
It's clean, it's safe, it's secured, it's home for now.
A new place to call home in San Diego, the old parking lot that offers temporary refuge for homeless people.
We're doing the legwork. We're not asking for anybody to do it. We're packing this stuff, we're using our own money, we're using the community's doing what it got to do.
Pitching in for Puerto Rico, the challenge of businesses sending relief to hurricane survivors. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency for Napa, Sonoma, and Yuba counties as more than a dozen wind-fueled wildfires are sweeping through Northern California today. 3 people have been killed, numerous people have been hurt, some are missing, and some 1,500 homes and businesses have been destroyed. One Santa Rosa resident was loading her belongings into a pickup truck as flames inched closer to her home.
We're trying to salvage what's going to be up in flames here. It's like pretty soon, so all these nice people, don't know them, they've all chipped in. We got most of our valuables out that I can think of. I'm in shock right now.
According to California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, about 20,000 people have been evacuated. The evacuation effort has been complicated by downed trees and roads blocked by flames. In Anaheim, officials say several homes have been burned as Santa Ana winds drive wildfire through neighborhood canyons. Anaheim Fire and Rescue says the fire has grown to 4 square miles. One firefighter suffered minor injuries while fighting the fire. An overnight shelter has been set up at a nearby high school for evacuees. Extra crews are on standby in San Diego as the first Santa Ana winds of the season buffeted the region today. Forecasters warn of gusts up to 50 miles an hour and increased fire danger in the region through tomorrow morning. The San Diego Fire Rescue Department put 5 extra brush engines, 2 extra water tenders, and more than 20 extra firefighters on duty to help battle any potential wildfires. A 12-acre brush fire erupted in the San Pasqual area this afternoon. It was quickly extinguished. We'll have more on your San Diego forecast in just a few minutes. San Diego's first ever campground for homeless people opened this morning at 20th and B Streets near downtown. Rows of red and green tents are providing a temporary refuge for 200 people. For 22-year-old Latorius Carlisle, it's a day of hope after months of living amid squalor on the sidewalks of downtown.
So it's a blessing, you know, not to be on the street. You have authority protecting you, and you don't have to worry about carrying stuff around all day because it wears you out too.
Volunteers with smiles greeted Carlisle, an Alabama native, as she walked up to the registration table. The warm welcome included a hygiene kit, pillow, and sleeping bag to go with her brand new tent. The fenced-in campground with showers, bathrooms, medical staff, and 24-hour security are luxuries she's not used to. Life on the street was rough.
Especially with me being young, they would try to take advantage of me, especially like they don't recognize my face being in the city.
This old city parking lot is now a community for women, children, seniors, and people with disabilities. Each campsite has its own address, a place to temporarily call home.
I'm so grateful for this.
53-year-old Haley Salas has been living on the streets or couch surfing for half of her life. She and her 2 service dogs were among the first to check into the camp.
It's clean, it's safe, it's secured. It's home for now.
The nonprofit Alpha Project will be running the campground for the next 2 to 3 months. President and CEO Bob McElroy says this is a starting point for people to heal while they wait to transition into more stable housing.
Today is a tremendous blessing because we're finally here. We're actually putting nails in the ground. You've seen the kids, the families coming in. You've seen our ladies, young and old. they're going to be safe tonight and they're going to be healthy tonight. We're going to start that process.
The city of El Cajon also unveiled a homeless-related program today. It's a campaign to discourage panhandling. Signs are going up around the city urging people not to give money to homeless people and directing them instead to visit the East County Homeless Task Force website. Posters with a similar message are being distributed to businesses by the East County Chamber of Commerce. The city says giving to programs that assist the homeless is better than giving cash directly to individuals. San Diego Gas and Electric wants to raise electricity rates by 11% starting in 2019. The utility filed a request with the state regulators on Friday. The company says the rate increase would help modernize and upgrade infrastructure to ensure long-term reliability and safety. Consumer advocates have long criticized the utility for charging some of the highest electricity rates in the country. SDG&E's parent company is currently in a battle with environmental groups in San Diego over community choice energy. The Metropolitan Water District Board in Los Angeles takes a crucial vote tomorrow on whether to support a plan to build 2 massive tunnels underneath the Sacramento Delta. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has the story.
The $17 billion project promises to help maintain the flow of water from the State Water Project by easing pressure on endangered fish populations in the Delta. 3 new water intakes on the Sacramento River north of the Delta would work in conjunction with the existing pump at the southern end. 2 massive 35-mile-long tunnels would carry the water under the Delta to the southern pump. Now, Metropolitan's Steve Arakawa says the tunnels will allow water managers to sidestep some seasonal water pumping restrictions.
When the salmon's coming down the Sacramento River, use the existing pumps. When the Delta smelts spawn in the southern end of the Delta, then go to the new pumps. That helps with overall protection, but it helps us in terms of our supply reliability so that we're not subjected to further cutbacks.
Metropolitan is voting whether to spend more than $4 billion on the project. That would increase local water bills by $2 to $3 a month. Now, the influential Westlands Water District has already rejected paying a $3 billion share, saying that's too much money for its farmers. The Kern Water District, another major water customer, is expected to weigh in on the project on Thursday. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Councilman Chris Cate announced last week that he leaked a confidential city attorney's memo to the proponents of the Soccer City initiative. And city attorney Mara Elliott is not satisfied with the councilman's explanation. The Soccer City measure seeks to redevelop the former Chargers Stadium property. It's due to go to the ballot next year. Cate says he gave the memo to the initiative's authors to get their input, and he doesn't regret his decision. Speaking with KPBS Midday Edition, the city attorney said Cate acted very differently in a private meeting with her the morning before his press conference.
He was very remorseful, somewhat emotional, as was I, because it's a breach of trust, and I was extremely disappointed in him. And I think he felt the same about himself. So when I heard what he said during his press conference, it was unapologetic. There was no assurance to the public that he would never do it again. There was no acknowledgement whatsoever of wrongdoing. There was no credible explanation for why he did what he did.
Some political operatives and a former city councilman have called on Cate to resign. He says he has no intention of doing so. California Senator Dianne Feinstein officially announced today that she is running for a 5th term. On Twitter, she wrote, "I'm all in, and there's lots more to do, including fighting gun violence, combating climate change, and boosting access to health care." At 84, Feinstein is the oldest member of the Senate. And to those who may say her best years are behind her, she says experience counts. Feinstein first won her Senate seat in 1992. Home sales in San Diego are dropping and prices are going up. That means more and more people are being priced out of the market. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more.
Single-family home sales were down 13% last month compared to the year before. The Greater San Diego Association of Realtors is reporting 1,800 homes were sold in September. That's 265 units lower than last year. The association's president, Robert Cavan, says right now homeowners just aren't selling and availability is low. The median price for a single-family home last month was just over $610,000.
we're down to that the median income in San Diego could only afford a house, basically 58% of a house. They'd have enough income to qualify for 58% of a house.
The Realtors Association is also reporting that condos and townhomes saw a 17% drop in sales from the year before. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego City employees are more likely to ride public transit than the average commuter. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says that's according to an employee survey presented to the City Council today.
13% of city employees ride transit to work, compared to about 4% of commuters citywide. That may be thanks to employment benefits. The city heavily subsidizes the cost of a monthly transit pass. But the vast majority of workers, 81%, still drive. The city heavily subsidizes parking as well. Maya Rosas of the nonprofit Circulate San Diego says the city has to take a more active role in improving the transit system.
And also the city should be working on making walking and biking safer and more convenient and more comfortable for everyone. And that way it'll encourage more employees at the city to walk or bike, but also it'll help the city reach its climate action plan goals.
Those goals include a massive shift away from cars in favor of biking, walking, and riding public transit. Cars and trucks are the city's biggest contributors to climate change. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Governor Brown signed a landmark bill today that will force drug companies to be more transparent when raising the price of drugs. The legislation will require drug manufacturers to provide a 60-day notice to insurers and government health plans if drug prices are going up more than 16% in a 2-year period, and it will require an explanation for the increase. Governor Brown says more and more Californians are getting desperate to find affordable prescription drugs, while drug companies are creating a hostile environment by not working with communities.
This is what we need. We got to work together. And to mobilize people, we often have to point to the evils. Well, we got to point to the evils. And there's a real evil when so many people are suffering so much from rising drug profits.
Hospitals and healthcare plans have already been complying with the same transparency requirements for several years. State lawmakers say California's influence could spark other states across the nation to pass similar drug transparency laws. California's laws surrounding HIV will be changing come January 1st under a bill signed today by Governor Brown. Currently, knowingly exposing a sexual partner to HIV is a felony. The new law will reduce those criminal charges to a misdemeanor. Republicans strongly oppose the measure, saying it will lead to higher infection rates. But backers say the current felony charges are outdated, and they've only worked to discourage people from getting tested.
In the 80s and 90s, there was so little known about HIV, and there was not anywhere near the same kind of treatment available that there is now. And because of that change in science, there needed to be a change in the law so that people could continue to live their lives and be able to be productive in society, and so that public health officials can continue to contain the spread of HIV.
The measure was one of hundreds of bills on the governor's desk awaiting approval. He has until October 15th to sign them. Coming up on PBS NewsHour, a deal that may have been derailed. Hardline immigration demands from the White House in exchange for protecting the so-called Dreamers.
Any potential DACA agreement has to include robust border security, and by that I don't mean a wall. Of course, tactical infrastructure like fencing is a part of the answer, but border security is more than that.
Plus, the downfall of a movie mogul, Harvey Weinstein, fired from his movie company. The allegations of sexual misconduct spanning decades. That's tonight on PBS NewsHour, starting at 7 o'clock, right here on KPBS. Nearly 3 weeks after Hurricane Maria, distributing aid across Puerto Rico is still a challenge. As AP reporter Marina Hutchinson explains, more help is needed to transport relief supplies to the island.
Businesses both large and small are pitching in to help with the relief effort in Puerto Rico. Aerospace giant Lockheed Martin is running flights of its own cargo planes out of Atlanta.
We're in a unique position because we right now have our own airplanes in a test program to be able to utilize those airplanes to help people.
Over the weekend, Lockheed Martin sent 2 flights filled with critical needs, including generators and water.
Some of our community partners, Coca-Cola and Home Depot, have worked with us to give us some pretty deep discounts.
Small companies are also stepping up. An aid effort started by Atlanta area Puerto Rican business owners ballooned with a surge of donations being offered.
We're doing the legwork. We're not asking for anybody to do it. We're packing this stuff. We're using our own money. We're using the community. The community's doing what it got to do.
Thomas says they need help getting goods they've collected to the island.
Coca-Cola has agreed to send all the goods that we've collected through their cargo planes and through their shipments. Now, prior to that, we had other companies and other religious organizations that donated the same kind of thing.
Thomas says they still have a few warehouses full of aid waiting to get to people who need it in Puerto Rico. Marina Hutchinson, The Associated Press.
We're still seeing fire danger conditions in San Diego County. Jeff Cornish is tracking the Santa Ana winds in tonight's forecast.
We're concerned about fire danger today and this evening and tonight. That continues with red flag warnings in effect across much of the area just east of the city. Ramona, Alpine, Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna, Campo, those areas under red flag warnings. The Santa Ana winds are the concern. Elevated fire danger, a combination of low humidity and a strong breeze, gusty wind. At times, Fremont Canyon, we've seen gusts up to 68 miles per hour already, and some may even see winds faster than that. Here are the sustained winds through the overnight hours, and the sustained wind around 20 miles per hour is substantial, but our concern is the gust that develops in between these basically longer sustained periods of wind, and the gusts at pass level and along some of the ridges and into the canyons are where we really get into trouble, and that can really exacerbate some of the wildfire dangers. Now, satellite radar is going to be real quiet. It's an offshore breeze. There's not much to see around here. By the way, some snow out there into Denver, Colorado. It's a long ways away from here, but they have seen their first significant round of snow for the fall, so the seasons are beginning to change. But our concerns are tied to the Santa Ana winds and a gusty breeze still for many tonight. 61 for your low, clear skies, and as we turn the page to tonight in other areas, 56 for your low in Borrego Springs, Oceanside a cooler 47, Mount Laguna 44, Campo 43. Dry day Tuesday. We're going to be dealing with a gradual reduction in the wind speed, but a nice, dry, warm day for us. We'll be up around 89 in Borrego Springs. Not terribly hot, though. Into San Diego, 77 with Mr. Sunshine. Those low clouds, the marine layer, not an issue now, but it will become more of a concern late this week as the offshore wind dies and the onshore breeze comes back in. Big dip in the jet stream will help to herald that change. Initially, you see these changes to the northwest, but we will follow suit later on. So you can see sunshine and then eventually the low clouds into the morning Thursday, low clouds Friday and Saturday as well, especially in the morning. Inland areas, we get a little cooler, 88 Tuesday down to 79 Thursday, low clouds in the mornings later this week. Mountain forecast dropping into the mid-60s, a good deal of sunshine there, and we'll close this out in the deserts around 90 degrees plus or minus. I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
An orphaned beluga whale is in intensive care, being treated by marine mammal experts from San Diego. Members of SeaWorld San Diego's animal rescue team traveled to Alaska to join the efforts to save the whale calf after it was found stranded. Veterinarians estimate the young whale is about 4 weeks old. Experts estimate there are less than 400 left in the wild. What did science fiction and LGBTQ activism have in common in the 1950s? A National Gay and Lesbian Archives director discovered hidden harmonies between the two movements in the personal papers of a pioneering activist. KCET producer Nathan Masters shows us the sanctuary of sci-fi.
The collection began with a guy named Jim Kepner, actually, back in the 1950s. He was a pack rat extraordinaire. He collected everything he could get his hands on. He read 5 to 6 newspapers a day, took clippings out, anything that had to do with LGBTQ things he was interested in. And at some point, what happened was he began to develop an interest in science fiction. And the collection that this is focusing on is in fact a collection that grew out of his fascination with science fiction and the science fiction community. The science fiction materials and the homophile materials were two separate interests of Kepner's, and so therefore were collected separately as well, but by Kepner. So that's how they're united. In the initial phases, I also think that there was a kind of crossover whereby if you were in the sci-fi world, you were ostracized and considered strange in the same way that you were considered strange if you were a part of the homophile movement. He began by joining a number of different fan groups, and the fan groups were personed by a number of different people who used AKAs, or also known as names, which would become a practice that was then extended on into the homophile movement, which was developed in the 1950s. This is one of my favorite things in this collection. This is published on the occasion of the 1500 meeting, May 12th, 1966. This is a look back at the Science Fiction and Fantasy Society, and it includes images from all the people who are a part of the group. So it becomes this really integral group that I think that if you look back at the literature, you find that Kepner is not the only person who's participating in the group, and that they are using it as a way to explore the possibility of how sexuality might be different in the future, and that there might be a possible world for them to live in which their sexuality is in fact accepted and a part of everyday life. Los Angeles seems to be a center of early sci-fi and homophile development. There seems to also be a kind of image where this was a place where folks could reinvent themselves. People could be something that they weren't under the scrutiny of the old world, which was East Coast based. So you could actually come to the new frontier, which was California, and reinvent yourself. So I think a lot of things did start here, but the sci-fi fan groups were in Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and they actually had correspondence, they had meeting notes, and all of those are contained in Kepner's collection because he was a member of the boards of many of those institutions. There was also correspondence with people in England and other countries. So it was not only national but international in scope, but it was a very small, very homespun kind of feel compared to what it is today. So I think that there was a mutual sort of admiration society that developed around it. And I'm certainly not trying to say that all these groups had huge homosexual overtones. What I am trying to say is that certainly homosexuals as a group of people were disproportionately, it seems to me, interested in these groups because of their ability to create cover for meetings. Kepner always knew. Kepner was one of those people who lived his life well beyond the period that he lived in. He, in his imagination, was able to envision a world where homosexuality would, he thought about gay people marrying way back in the 1950s. He was always talking about that. I think that's why partly his attraction to science fiction was so strong in him, because he could actually look back on his life and think about what possibilities could be. And that's why science fiction was so attractive to him, because it was a way to imagine a future that he could be free and he could live his life the way he wanted to live his life. And that just wasn't possible in his time. What I'm really hoping for is that a new generation of young people will come and do research on this material and find out what I haven't found out. This organization and this collection is fantastic in the sense that every day there's more possibility for finding out something that has been erased from the past. And in this particular case, I had no idea when I came upon these materials that there was any connection whatsoever between homosexuality and the sci-fi movement. I think the evidence is clear that there's a really deep connection, and I think that it would be really great if researchers came and found out more about how that exchange has gone over time.
That story was from Artbound, a production of KCET in Los Angeles. An update to our top story tonight. State fire officials say at least 10 people have died in fast-moving wildfires in Northern California. Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency for Orange County now, in addition to Napa, Sonoma, and Yuba counties. The fires have destroyed at least 1,500 homes and businesses, and thousands have been evacuated. Here's a look at what we're working on tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, get ready to bake. The communities who benefit from Mama's Pie in the Sky Thanksgiving Bake Sale. And on Midday Edition, following up on the massive security breach at the Equifax Credit Reporting Agency. The security experts who say we need more safeguards for our personal information. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.